Good evening. Welcome back to the Glazov gang. Our gang members this evening: Andrew Klavan, world-renowned and critically acclaimed adult thriller writer; Evan Sayet, America's #1 conservative comedian; and Eric Allen Bell, writer and filmmaker. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Evan Sayet has a show coming up in Westlake Village on March 25th. Don't miss it.
It's a night of conservative comedy with me and another one of the gang members, Alsonia Schmidt.
How come I never get let in for free? Can I get in for free this time?
Yeah, sure.
Don't do it.
we encourage.
Maybe I'll take all the money I've been paid for these things and pay for your ticket.
Oh,
Ouch.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, welcome back to the Glazov gang. Tonight's topic: Quran burning in Afghanistan, and now all the riots and protests. I find a couple things very interesting. That first of all, what happened was the Qurans that were in the hands of the people, that whatever ended up happening to them. I'm not even sure they said it was a burning, but something happened. There was some kind of charcoal or something. I don't know. But they took the Qurans at first because they were being used as material for clandestine extremist behavior and planning among the Islamists and prisoners in the detention centers. So this is something that the media doesn't mention. Also, I will also say, just myself as a Christian, if you burn a Bible in front of me, I will say that, I don't think that that's a good thing to do. But I personally wouldn't lose any sleep over it, because that's something you've done. It doesn't necessarily affect me. What's going on here in terms of that phenomenon, and why is the White House apologizing profusely, the media only emphasizing certain themes and not the themes that I've mentioned? Andrew?
Well, this is going to be an unpopular point of view on this program, I know, but this is a pretty typical imperial problem. This is a problem of a modern power being in a pre-medieval. They keep saying Afghanistan is medieval. I've been to Afghanistan. It's waiting to achieve medievalism. This reminds me of something out of Josephus, of the Romans going into Palestine.
Josephus. Go ahead.
Romans going into Palestine and the Jews saying, no, you can't bring in your emperor worship here. You can't bring in your standards here. This is a violent. It's been a fatal reaction. Is it obscene to kill people over the burning of a book? Yes, it is. But you're dealing with like I said, a primitive country and a primitive people. What bothers me is not so much this, and not even the apologies, because that's just something you have to do. That's just politic. What bothers me is the crippled conversation about Islam in the West. The people being arrested in Denmark, the people being silenced in Norway and Canada from speaking out. Eric being fired from the Daily Kos for speaking out about the nature of Islam. It doesn't bother me that primitive Islamists act like primitive Islamists. Okay, I kind of expect that to happen. What bothers me is that there is no vociferous, united response from the West.
Andrew, one second. Andrew, if America's whole goal is to have nation building and increase the popularity of America in Afghan eyes, why are they letting this even happen in the first place? How do they even let people?
It was a mistake. It was
a mistake
to burn the Quran.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a good way to make friends.
But how do they even let this thing happen? Just like they take pictures in Abu Ghraib. Well, this is idiocy.
Yeah, but it's going to happen when you have hundreds of thousands of soldiers and people and young ones, and going through some place, you're going to have some idiot who puts a panty on a terrorist head. Right. I don't know how you don't have it. It's amazing that we don't have 1,000 times worse than that. Every army in the history of the world has had almost as a matter of course 1,000 times worse than that within their ranks. What bothers me, and Andrew's right on, it's not that the Muslims are acting the way Muslims do. It's that you pointed out the Quran was being used to pass secrets, to advance their. In other words, it wasn't a holy book to them. They were just like
It's a war manual.
Just like they use ambulances to transport bombs and murderers, and then when you bomb the ambulance, the leftist media knows what they're using it for and doesn't report what they know. It's like we're not having a dialogue. There's an intentional spinning of the story towards the bad and away from the good.
Well, there's a reason. There's a bigger, if I may. When we look at the religious practices of the Afghan people, generally speaking, you can burn a 15-year-old girl, just don't burn a Koran. You can force a 9-year-old to marry a 55-year-old man. Insulting Islam, according to today in Al Jazeera, is against the law in Afghanistan. I have to fact check that, but that's the last I heard. Within Islam, the penalty for leaving Islam is killing. So these are the religious practices of the people of Afghanistan. If I could read a quote, comes from the department.
Before you do, none of this is on the front page of the New York Times.
Of course not.
And yet, on the front page of the New York Times is this story, right?
Right.
Go ahead.
So I've just described the religious practices of the people of Afghanistan. Department of Defense press release issue number 124-12. Today, Leon Panetta, U.S. Defense Secretary, we honor and respect the religious practices of the Afghan people without exception.
Yeah, and that is a question I always want to ask left-wingers, is which practices of the Muslims do you support? Which Muslim practices? Is it the subjection of women? Is it the killing of homosexuals? Is it the murder of people who... in Iran, they are sentencing to death a Christian pastor because he converted. They are activating to build a mosque near the site of the Twin Towers, but where is there the cathedral in Saudi Arabia? This is not... We can't have tolerance that only goes in one direction.
But the left has completely
I'll answer your question with a story. Katie Couric, all right, the managing editor and anchor of one of the most important news organizations in America, the most recent recipient of the Walter Cronkite Award for Excellence in Television Journalism, hosted a symposium on Islam on television. She started by apologizing to the Muslim panelists about the Islamophobia and the hate and the bigotry that she's witnessed regarding the mosque at Ground Zero. And then she said, and I'm embarrassed to admit it, but I don't know anything about Islam. All right? They know these things, but they don't know these things. They're not allowed to believe these things because if they're true, then Islam is bad, and they're not allowed to recognize bad. They conflate morality with open-mindedness.
Yeah. But look, we are all fighting this culture war. Eric has shown that if you start fighting, we can get our opponents to back down. What hope do you have, Eric, that we can somehow break through these boundaries that the left has created in our society that we just can't cross?
Very concretely, the way that CARE is succeeding in this country...
Tell us how it's succeeding. It's gagging the media.
I've said that Islam is the biggest victimizer in the world. CARE has convinced America through the media that Islam is a victim, such that the media is self-censoring itself. Rarely does CARE even have to send out a press release slapping the hands of the New York Times.
I think that the FBI can't even train its
They've infiltrated the
anymore.
FBI. They're allowed access, I think unprecedented access, to FBI documents to make sure they're not Islamophobic. Weren't they just investigated not that long ago, X number of years ago, as part of the Holy Land Foundation? And now they're giving this, how
do we protect our society when we can't even label or discuss
I think it's really important. It's very important that we talk about ideas. It's really important that we keep the conversation on the level of ideas. I mean, there are people who do bad things, and there are people who are Islamic, obviously, who are wonderful people. I know some of them. They can be wonderful people. That's not the question. The question is what ideas are we discussing? And when you discuss ideas, it makes it a lot harder for people to attack you on the basis of being hateful. And if they do attack you, you can defend yourself. I mean, we can't be afraid. We can't be silenced by the insults. We can't be silenced by the name calling. And we have to make sure that people understand what we're talking about. It is not that Muslims are bad. It is not that all Muslims believe X, Y, or Z. It is that there are ideas in the Quran and the ideas in Islam that can be opposed and should be opposed and must be opposed by a freedom level.
When you talk about name calling, what is something that you've been called by the left?
Oh, I've been called Islamophobic and hateful. I get called. I have never gotten, not one time have I gotten. I get hate mail, obviously.
What do they say?
They call me names. They almost never argue with me.
There are
They
no
almost-
What names do they call you? Islamophobic?
There are no arguments.
Oh, hateful Islamophobic. Stupid, mostly. They call me stupid, yeah.
But they're not as mean as I've been with you.
There's another
They saw me with
component
it.
to though. There's a really important component, and just to sort of add to, I think, what you were saying. The problem is we can make the most valid points in the world, but we're preaching to the choir.
Yes.
Because I can tell you the perception is that this is a partisan issue. And it's a conservative issue.
Okay,
and it needs to be reframed as a human rights issue.
I think that America is not divided in two, we're divided in three. There are the Daily Kos people and the Rosie O'Donnells about whom there's nothing you can do. There's no logical argument that they're making, so what logical argument can you counter? There's a whole bunch in the middle. I was one who had just never heard an alternative point of view. Where would I have heard it? From my rabbi, from my teachers, from my university professors? Our job now is, and I have a program, I call it Adopt a Democrat. Find one person in your life who you know is not a brain dead, hate America.
This is a
always
great
liberal.
idea.
You take him to the zoo for a day?
If you have to, and you be kind to the animals while you're there. All right?
Gentlemen, before we go to our concluding statements, I overheard you three talking in a room, and you guys didn't hear me, that you guys were saying that this show that I'm hosting is better than O'Reilly, Hannity, and even Glenn Beck.
That's right.
Can you repeat this on the air, please?
I
what were you
just
saying?
said you were better looking than O'Reilly. That's what I meant.
and I was talking about Scott O'Reilly and
Okay. Glazov gang members, thank you for joining the Glazov gang. Before we leave, what each of you are up to in the near future, Eric?
Continuing production on Not Welcome documentary, notwelcomedocumentary.com. About a 53,000 square foot mega mosque being built in the middle of the American Bible Belt.
Andrew.
I have a terrific suspense thriller for young adults coming out in May. It's called Crazy Dangerous, and I hope you'll look for it.
Fantastic.
And I've got a night of conservative comedy starring me, Alsonia Schmidt, another one of the gang members, in Westlake Village on March 25th. Go to evansayet.com for information.
Thank you. Eric, who's going to win as the Republican candidate?
The plutocrats.
No, seriously.
The plutocrats
Okay.
are going to win the election.
Okay, who's going to win the
It
presidential
doesn't
election?
matter. It's the same party. The corporatists will win the election.
Andrew, who do you think is going to win?
You're going to win the election?
Okay, first of all, the
general?
Republican race?
I have no idea, but I think there's actually going to be someone riding in from the outside.
Who's
Maybe
going to
Mitch
win?
Daniels.
Oh, really? Who's going to win in 2012?
Oh man! Right now, it looks like Obama. I hope it's not.
Depressed or scared about that?
I'm concerned. I'm not
Concerned?
scared
Evan?
of anything.
I don't know the how it all works, and if it's possible for a Mitch Daniels to come in at this point without an organization, without the money, without the Yeah, I'd like to believe maybe somebody from the outside who, I mean, there are a number of people that I wish had run. I think our nominee is going to be Rick Santorum. I think they've made the very, very clear that the Republicans don't want Mitt Romney.
And will Obama win the election?
It depends on whether we can make the election about Obama or whether they can make the election about our candidate.
Thank you for joining the Glazov gang. Join us next week. Good night.